I'm Dirk Vansintjan. I'm a local guy. I was born 15 kilometers from the center of Brussels. So I could address you in the Brussels dialect if you want, but there's hardly anyone understanding it anymore. So I'm not a professor. I'm not an engineer. I was trained as a linguist. I studied the old Gothic language. No one talks this anymore for over centuries already. And by coincidence, I got involved in the ecological movement in Leuven, university town. And we had this crazy idea of renovating an industrial mill. And that's the coincidence that leads you to renewable energy and energy cooperatives. Sometimes I say when it would have been a brewery, perhaps you would be drinking a nice beer brewed by us, but so now it's renewable energy. Yeah, I see my presentation over there. Yeah. So indeed, we started in 1982 already. I stopped my studies. And we started with an NGO. It was called Het Samen Anders Proberen, trying to do it in a different way. And we did. And we renovated this industrial mill. And there was a water wheel, and we tried to make electricity. We failed. We put a wind turbine on the roof, and it didn't work. We put some PV panels. They worked sometime. And then, this was the first building in Belgium that was insulated from the outside, and it's still one of the best buildings in Leuven, I think, because we did a very good job at that time. So the title of my presentation, in fact, says everything. It's, in fact, according to us, the energy transition should also lead to energy democracy, and you see it's a bright future, and not so bright for the capitalist. How does it work? No? Yeah. So that's what I will be talking about very fast. A few years later, we bought another mill. That's where I live. It's the most famous water mill in Europe now. I show it there all the time. It's also one of the. It seems we were one of the pioneers of co-housing in Flanders as well. We didn't know at that time, but it is. And from this NGO, we discovered that when you're in the energy sector, you need to attract quite a lot of money to make the investments, and that an NGO is not the right legal entity to do this. And we started a cooperative in 1991 already. This is quite a long time ago, and we started production with this water mill 4 years later. And to give you the context of that time, it's not that long ago, is that when we went to the Electrabel, the monopolist at that time, and we said we are going to produce electricity, and we want to feed it into the grid. They said this will cost you a lot of money. Okay, so we had to make an economical framework in Flanders, and we did this by translating the German feed-in tariff law into Dutch. That's what I did, and into French. That's what someone else did. And the Green parties, they put it on the table in the Belgian Senate. And this caused a series of activities because until that time, the electricity price and everything about energy in Belgium was figured out in a sort of control committee, they called it. And for the consumers, for the citizens, it was the trade unions who were there. And in fact, they were more concerned about the wages of the people working in the sector than about what we had to pay for our energy or how it was made. But in fact, the fact that there was for the first time a law threatening them, and this informal committee, they invited us and they said, well, you can get 1 Belgian franc per kilowatt hour. And said, well, yes, for us that's nice, but when we want to install wind turbines, we need at least 2. And then said, okay, yes, you get 2 Belgian francs per kilowatt hour. And so that's how it started. And We started around the kitchen table with 6 people, I think. The kitchen table is still standing there in Rotselaar. And now we're 50,000 members in Flanders. We have 50 million euro equity. And we're, since the liberalization, our General Assembly, they decided that we would become a supplier of green electricity. And now we supply 1.5% of the households in Flanders with green electricity. You will never have seen any publicity of EcoPower so far, because we don't need this, because the best publicity is that we sell our electricity at cost. We don't make any profit on this because we're a cooperative. So this is the story of EcoPower. I myself and for EcoPower, I've been involved then in the founding of several federations on Belgian level, on the European level, and now we reorganized the Belgian level because after the last round of regionalization in Belgium, we don't have a lot to talk about with our French-speaking colleagues in the south of Belgium, so we now have a Flemish and a Walloon federation. And since the end of 2013, for EcoPower, I was chosen as the president of this European federation, Rescoop.eu. So what's a Rescoop? It stands for Renewable Energy Sources Cooperative. It shouldn't be a cooperative as a legal entity. It can be a trust, it can be an NGO, but in fact it should be an open group of citizens who cooperate on renewable energy and energy efficiency. That can be production, distribution, supply, or development of services. They are also, in the UK, they're rather called community power initiatives, and according to us, most of them, they follow the International Cooperative Alliance principles, which I won't explain now. According to us, renewable energy sources are common goods. They're not private, so a farmer having a nice piece of land where you can put a wind turbine, actually, according to us, he doesn't own the wind, because when you install a wind turbine on his land, his neighbor can't do the same, so he privatized the wind for himself or for the company who got his signature. So it's not public either, so it doesn't belong to the state. But it's there for all of us. We can use it in a sustainable way for common purposes. So we're talking about the sun, the wind, water. So we set up a federation. Why? Well, when we started EcoPower, we thought we were the first and all alone in the world. But over the past years, we've discovered that there are numerous initiatives like this. And we, in fact, we thought it would be very good to have a European federation, because quite a lot of what happens in member states of the EU is the result of a directive that is written here in Brussels. And when you act against the implementation on a member state level, you're in fact a few years too late. So it's very it's necessary that we are present here in Brussels and that we try to advocate what we want, to lobby, if you want. So we are a registered lobbyist. I'm a lobbyist now, half time. And we founded this federation with EcoPower, with established cooperatives, with the Windvogel from the Netherlands, Enercop from France, and Somenergia from Spain. So now we have members all over, well, not all over Europe, and we represent now about half of the 2,400 known Rescoops. But yesterday we had a meeting in the European Parliament, and our Danish member, he said, well, we just had a meeting in Copenhagen, and we counted all the Rescoops, and there were not 600 as they first thought, but 1,000 energy cooperatives in Denmark there are now. So I should write there 2,800 Rescoops. We found our place in the international cooperative movement. We are a member of Cooperatives Europe and its energy working group, In fact, we were asked to lead that energy working group, which is across all sectors. It's also social housing, it's also retail, it's industry and so on. So we were asked to lead this energy working group now, and we do advocacy and we develop services for our members. I will come to that later. So where can you find them? They're not all of them are not on it, so they have to put on our website. They can put themselves on the map. But this is about 320 should be there somewhere. And you see that it's more like a northwestern thing. So all the Swedes are missing, all the Danes are missing. So they don't really agree with the fact that they should federate. They work on a very local level, and they don't see why Copenhagen should meddle with their village. So they don't see why Brussels should do it either. So it's we have to convince them. But we can see that the more you go south and the more you go east, there are less energy cooperatives. In fact, in the east of Europe, with the exception of Croatia, there are no energy cooperatives. I will go through Europe a bit. In Spain, if you're interested, there is a very creative, young, new cooperative called Som Energia. They started in Catalonia, but they now have more than 70 local groups all over Spain. When you meet them, when EcoPower meets the General Assembly, it's all older men, engineers, technicians. When you go to Spain to their meetings, it's women, young women. It's more like a social movement. They do this in a very hostile environment because there is no support mechanism anymore for renewables, and nevertheless they install PV panels. They will install a wind turbine next year, so they're very active. Another country in great difficulties is Greece. We pay a lot of attention with our federation to Greece. We support several initiatives. One of the examples is the island of Sifnos. I wrote a little book. You can buy it here for €4 in Dutch or in English, where the example of Sifnos is explained. So 2,400 people, and the production of electricity on the island with oil, because they're not connected with the cable, costs about €6 million a year. Yeah? The transition to renewables costs about €20 million a year, €20 million. So in a few years, there's a return, but it doesn't happen because of vested interest, as you told. The public power company has been doing this for 80 years, and they want to keep on doing this. But this costs, all these islands cost a tremendous amount of money for the state company, public power company, and the Greeks on the mainland, because they have the same price on the island as on the mainland. So the cooperative now, they will try to take over the grid and to make the transition to 100% renewables. In France, the cooperatives face quite a lot of problems because of the monopoly of the state-owned company EDF. Nevertheless, the first cooperative wind farms are appearing, and they also have a fund, Énergie Partagée, so that also people from Paris can invest in local projects of small communities in the rural areas where hardly any people live anymore in France. And then this is also an interesting case in the Netherlands. There are quite some, today they have a very big meeting. Hier Opgewekt is the name. There are hundreds of initiatives locally. In almost every municipality there is a new initiative. And there are about 25 established wind cooperatives, but to give you an idea, together they only have half of the members of EcoPower. So the key to this difference is the supply of electricity. So if you only produce and you sell it to the grid, you don't reach as many people as when you can supply these people with their own energy. And that's the key to more people like EcoPower did. And this is an interesting example in Zeeland. It's the south of the Netherlands, near the seaside. 2 energy cooperatives, they have 3,500 members together. They obtained the permit for 40 wind turbines. It is a project of 200 million euros. We're not talking about small projects. But they can't raise the equity required for this project. So they looked over the border, they talked to us, and we said, well, we need a year to raise enough equity to do this. But they couldn't wait. So now they found a very classical solution from the classical economy. So the wind turbine manufacturer takes half of the project, brings along a German bank, and so most of this citizens' energy project will go to Germany instead of to the Dutch. But I will come to Belgium later. We're not doing any better. There's Belgium. So in Belgium, most of the farmers signed a contract with Electrabel, with Electrawinds, with Storm, with Colruyt, whoever. And who didn't win this rush for the wind, that was the cooperatives. We were too busy setting up our supply system. And what we do against this is that we try to tell to our authorities that the wind is not owned by who has the land, and we claim the wind. So instead of the wind rush, we had a wind claim, and we put up poles around Flanders. And this one is still standing in the Pannen. We have another picture of people lying there in the sun, and it's still standing. So some people must have read it. And we also face other problems. I won't go very deep into all the problems, but recently our government, to save the support mechanism for renewables, they posed a tax on every household, actually on every consumer, also the businesses, small businesses. And to give you an idea, so the 40,000 clients of EcoPower, remember clients, they pay, this tax means that they pay 4 million euros for 80 gigawatt hour. And a large company, one large company who is connected to the low tension or mid tension lines, who consume as much, they pay 75,000 euros. So in fact, this shows that not here in Belgium, in Flanders, well, this is not Flanders, this is Brussels, but in Flanders, the energy transition is paid by citizens, and I'll come to that later. Germany, there has been an enormous growth of energy cooperatives, and in Germany, the feed-in tariff mechanism, I think it was by coincidence, gave an enormous boost to the fact that citizens invested in the Energiewende, in the energy transition. So about half of the new production facilities, renewable energy production facilities, are in hands of farmers, groups of citizens, and cooperatives. It's not all cooperatives. But you see that at the end of last year, there was a decline in the setting up of new cooperatives. There are now about 1,000 of them. And this is due to the uncertainty that was created by a European directive, the state aid guidelines, and the implementation in Germany. But I'll come to that later. The only country in Europe where everything is fine, and if you want to pay a visit to the future, go to Denmark. And this is an offshore wind farm out of Copenhagen. Half of it is owned by the cooperative, the rest is the state-owned company. And who's doing the maintenance? It's the cooperative, because they do it better and cheaper. In the UK, there's also we have seen an enormous growth of community energy initiatives. Energy for All is it's a cooperative of cooperatives. They set up new projects and new cooperatives. It's like an innovation company. They set up cooperatives, but in the last elections, the Conservatives, they now stopped all new inland wind and also solar. So they will step out of coal, but they will go to fracking and nuclear. So that's what the conservatives want. But there is a big movement, and even there are conservatives from local areas who are very angry because this policy. So there's a big fight going on in the UK for the moment. In Italy, that's very interesting. In the north of Italy, in the Alpine regions, in the Apennines, there are about 65 energy cooperatives. Some of them are more than a century old. Most of them speak German. They were able to stop the nationalization after the Second World War, mostly because they said they didn't understand what Rome wanted. And now they organize themselves in SEV, Südtiroler Energieverein. And if you want to see smart grids and clever things, you can go to Denmark, but you can also go to South Tyrol. And now they are threatened by an implementation of another European directive, which says that in the energy sector you should unbundle, you can't do everything. Well, these cooperatives, they produce, they own the grid, they distribute and they supply. And so now some of these cooperatives have 3 employees. They have to split themselves in 4 different cooperatives. So that's also something Europe wants us to do. And then this is a nice picture of communism, women going to the field together. So in Eastern Europe, they try to bury the cooperative idea together with communism. For instance, in Poland, they actively want cooperative farms to stop. So EU support for farmers cannot go to cooperative farms, for instance, in Poland. But in Croatia, the first energy cooperatives are appearing now. And so these are the bad guys. These are the ones who, at the end of 2014, came to, at the end of 2013, they came to Brussels. They met in the Magritte Museum. You know, the famous Belgian painter, René Magritte. Well, one of his paintings is Ceci n'est pas une pipe. This is not a pipe. Well, we can say this is not the energy transition. So all these guys with ties and suits, in fact they wanted to stop the growing role of citizens and groups of citizens in the energy sector. They wanted to stop renewables, and so they got what they wanted. They got the state aid guidelines. What does this mean, the state aid guidelines? This means that Europe says how the support for instance, for renewable energy should be given, and it should be given using tendering. So this means that when you have a project, you say, well, for this project we need this support, and that's a tender, and there's a certain amount of money available every year, and the cheapest wins. So you must compete with biomass installations and so on. So when we read the first texts about this, we feared that small SMEs and cooperatives would never win tenders like this. And with the first implementations of this in Germany, we see indeed that also the exceptions that were written by Europe for SMEs and cooperatives and local projects, they are not implemented on a member state level. And we see that in Germany, this has led to the fact that in Germany almost no new energy cooperatives are created now, because there's no perspective anymore that their projects would get the support. So these are the bad guys. But we now have a new commission. We have Commissioner Cañete coming out of the oil business. But nevertheless, I almost fell from my chair in London where I was invited by the Commission. And in his introduction, he was talking about EcoPower, about me. Yeah, strange. And we now see in the introduction of their text, they're always talking about citizens, cooperatives, full ownership. People should be encouraged, and so on. But it never goes very far. We don't see when they implement. We see that it's only text in the introduction. But nevertheless, this is a start. I now found the person who wrote this. He's a German. He's in favor of energy cooperatives, and he is allowed to write the introduction and so far. Yeah. Because this energy transition is unleashed. It has started, and these persons from the Magritte group, they can't stop it. And to give you, to show you what happened, so this is EcoPower, all the households of EcoPower, their consumption. So in 2003, we started with the supply of our members, and their average consumption was about the average of Flemish households. It was about 4,000 kilowatt hours. And so now, 11 years later, and end of 2014, 12 years later, I think, it has gone down to 2,000 kilowatt hours. So it halved. And when you take out the people who have PV panels, it went down to 2,900, I think. So even not taking into account PV, it has gone down. And when every European citizen is doing this, this is the end of the business model of the the big energy companies. So this is what the energy transition means, that people are able to do this at home or together in a cooperative. And this is energy transition from fossil and nuclear, so I have to stress this in Europe always, to renewables, from wasting to saving energy, from centralized to a more decentralized production. This means in the right amount, at the right moment, at the right place. And what we have now in Belgium is right the contrary. So it's in Doel, in Tihange, not in the right amount, not in the right moment, and not at the right place. Yeah. 5 minutes? Okay, I'll try. So this energy transition, I told you already, is paid by citizens as consumers. The support mechanism is reflected in their distribution tariff. As taxpayers, and also when we have savings in the bank, all the developers, they go to the banks and get our money. We only get 1%, and they do projects with it, and they get more. And according to us, this is in fact a unique opportunity. It's the moment to choose as a citizen whether you stay passive and undergo all this. This energy transition in Belgium alone, it will cost 400 billion euros. And if you leave it to the private, to the capitalistic sector, they want to make at least 15% profit on this. Or you become active and you organize, like the people in Ghent here, you organize in an energy cooperative. And what is essential for us is that this energy transition, it should lead to energy democracy. And when it's not an energy democracy, I don't think the energy transition will be successful. We need citizens that are aware of the necessity of the energy transition. We need sustainable energy action plans on a local level that are the result of a participative process where you start with a white page so that people not really only have the feeling, but that the plan is made with them. It's their plan, and citizen ownership of the production facilities is essential, is crucial. There should be we should keep the link between renewables and energy efficiency. So now all these developers, they want to install wind turbines, solar panels, and then they leave us and the municipalities behind with all the energy efficiency problems. They take the money and they run. So we need the money locally to do the necessary investments also in the public buildings and in our houses. And there are some rare municipalities in Flanders that have seen the light. I can count them on one hand. It's City of Eeklo, Asse, Schoten, Beersel is also following now. And the alternative of energy democracy, that is that people turn against renewables, that they form action committees against wind turbines, and that this might stop the energy transition. And what we see more and more in Europe is that once people are active in an energy cooperative, once they see that they have a grip on energy, that they become local energy actors, that they do other things. They build a kindergarten, they save the local pub, the last local pub, they open a cooperative store. So we see that they become local actors. So these are the examples I want. So we have some recommendations. We want to keep to the authorities and to the citizens, we want to keep the common goods in hands of the citizens, keep the production in their hands, and also keep the transmission and distribution networks in the hands of citizens. So in Belgium now, that's also a result of the unbundling directive. Electrabel, the monopolist, went out of the distribution networks. Now only the municipalities own the distribution networks. That's fine, but they miss the 700 million euros that Electrabel took along. So they're looking for a new partner, an investment fund from Canada, and they are offered 5% return on investment. Did they ever ask any Flemish citizen, you want to invest in your own distribution network? You get 5%? No. So there's no one is talking about this. Even the Greens are not talking about this. I never heard about this. So we should try to stop this, because this will happen in a few weeks. So it's urgent. And so we want to, of course, we want to spread our movement across Europe. And that's the way we want to do it. It's the strawberry model. So one plant can't cover the whole field or the forest, but together with all its runners, I remember the word, we give us a few years, few decades, and we can cover the whole of Europe. That's it.